"Turn the car around, Irving. Right now." My voice came out so sharp that even I barely recognized it. 1 second, I was staring through the windshield at the long country road leading to my son's house for our family reunion. And the next, every alarm bell in my head started going off at once. 30 years managing construction sites teaches you to spot when something's not right. And brother, this was not right. My wife, Denise, glanced at me, confused, then looked back at the road. "Irving, what's wrong?" she asked. "Please," I said. Then louder, "Turn around now." She'd been married to me for 35 years, long enough to know when I was just worried and when I was dead serious. She didn't argue. She gripped the steering wheel, checked the mirrors, and made a quick U-turn onto the narrow shoulder. Gravel crunched under our tires as our Honda pointed away from the reunion, away from the house where our son Maurice had promised barbecue, games for the grandkids, and one big happy family day. But I knew better now, because just seconds earlier I'd seen something that made my blood run cold. A black pickup truck was parked behind a row of pine trees near the end of Maurice's driveway, where no guest would ever park. 2 men stood beside it, and they weren't carrying casserole dishes or folding chairs. They were positioned like security, like site supervisors, watching for the concrete truck to arrive. They were watching the road, watching our car, and one of them had lifted his phone to his ear the moment he spotted us coming. Then Maurice had stepped out onto his front porch, looked straight at our car, and didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched with the same calculating expression I'd seen him use when he was bidding jobs, sizing up the situation, figuring out his next move. "My name is Irving Patterson. I'm 58 years old, retired construction project manager, father of 2, grandfather of 3. Until that afternoon, I thought I knew what family trouble looked like. I had no idea my own son was capable of something that would make me fear for our safety." As Denise drove us away from Maurice's neighborhood, I kept checking the side mirror. No one was following us yet, but that didn't calm my nerves. My chest felt tight, like when you're reviewing blueprints and spot a structural flaw that could bring down the whole building. "Don't stop anywhere near here," I told her. "Just drive." She nodded. "Okay, that's the kind of woman Denise is. Steady, practical, the sort of wife who doesn't need every answer right away when things get serious." We drove in silence for about 10 minutes before she pulled into a truck stop with a convenience store and a small restaurant attached. A few people were getting gas. An older woman was walking her dog near the picnic tables. Safe enough, I figured. Safe enough for a moment. Denise parked near the building and turned off the engine. Then she looked straight at me. "Tell me everything." I opened my mouth, but for a second, no words came out. I reached for my water bottle, took a sip, and tried to organize my thoughts like I would on any job site when something went sideways. "I saw Maurice," I said. She frowned. "Well, of course you did. We were going to his house." "No," I said. I saw his face that made her go still. There are some things you only understand after building a life with someone. A stranger wouldn't know what I meant, but Denise did. She knew I was talking about the look in our son's eyes. Maurice had my dark hair and Denise's quick smile. As a kid, he'd been sharp as a tack, always asking how things worked, always wanting to help me with projects around the house. When he was 12, he used to hand me tools while I fixed the deck, chattering about wanting to build houses when he grew up. When he turned 22, he started his own small construction company with $15,000 he'd saved and a loan I co-signed for another $25,000. I was proud as hell. Gave him advice, helped him land his first few contracts through my industry connections, taught him everything I knew about reading people and managing jobs. For 8 years, things went well. Maurice was good with clients, honest with subcontractors, careful with his books. He paid back the loan early, bought a nice house, married Veronica, started having kids. When he turned 30, things started going sideways. He got impatient, started taking on jobs that were too big for his crew, borrowed money to expand too fast. By 32, he was leveraged to the hilt. By 34, he was missing payments, losing contracts, making excuses I'd heard from failed contractors my whole career. But even through all that, I could usually still see the good kid underneath when we talked. Not today. When he stepped onto that porch and looked at our car, his expression was flat, calculating like he was watching a job site and waiting for the right moment to move equipment into position. Denise leaned back slowly. "What else did you see? The truck." "2 men. I swallowed hard. They were positioned like security, Denise, like they were watching for us specifically." Her eyebrows pulled together. "You're sure?" 35 years on construction sites, I said. "You learn to read positioning, learn to spot when someone's coordinating a job." The truck was hidden but had clear sight lines to the road. The men were dressed casual but standing formal, and Maurice looked at them before he looked at us. She stared through the windshield at the empty parking lot. Could it be some kind of work thing? Maybe he hired help for the party setup? I wanted that to be true more than anything, but my gut was telling me different. "You didn't see his face." I said quietly. That wasn't a son waiting for his parents. That was a man waiting for a job to start. Denise exhaled slowly. Then we called the police. The words should have made me feel better. Instead, they twisted my stomach into knots. Because if we called the police, I'd have to explain the thing I'd been ignoring for the past 2 months. And ignoring problems, I was learning, is how they grow from manageable to dangerous. I looked down at my wedding ring. There's something I should have told you, I said. Her face changed immediately. Not angry, just alert. What is it? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Maurice's name lit up the screen. My whole body tensed. Denise looked at the display, then back at me. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I knew I needed to hear his voice. I pressed accept and put it on speaker. Dad. Maurice's voice came out warm, relaxed, almost cheerful. Too cheerful. Where are you guys? Everyone's here waiting. Everyone. That word sent ice through my veins because I was no longer sure who everyone really meant. We had to stop for gas, I said, keeping my voice steady. There was a tiny pause. Tiny, but I caught it. That's weird, he said with a small laugh. Denise filled up this morning before you left. Denise's eyes snapped to mine. Neither of us had mentioned stopping for gas to him. Dad, Maurice said again, you sound tense. Everything okay? I looked at the convenience store window, at my own reflection looking older and more worried than I felt comfortable with. Suddenly, I remembered another phone call, late at night 2 months ago. Maurice talking fast about cash flow problems and pressure from investors and needing to do something big to fix everything. At the time, I'd told myself it was just business stress. Every contractor goes through rough patches. The recession had hit construction hard, and plenty of good companies had folded through no fault of their own. I wanted to believe it was normal. Now I realized I'd heard him clearly the first time, and I'd chosen not to listen. Dad, Maurice said again, and now his tone was sharper. We're all waiting. Clarence and the other kids made you that welcome banner. Clarence, my 14-year-old grandson, Maurice's oldest boy. Sweet kid, always asking about my old construction projects, wanted to be an engineer like his grandpa. The mention of him made my heart clench. We're not coming, I said. The line went dead quiet. Then Maurice's voice came back, different now. Not warm, not casual, careful. Did someone talk to you? My fingers tightened around the phone. Talk to me about what? Another pause. Then the fake cheerfulness returned, but it sounded hollow now, like paint over rust. You're making this weird, Dad. The kids are really excited. Marlene made you that picture you like. Marlene was his 10-year-old daughter. Bright as a penny, always drawing me little cartoons of construction equipment and job sites. Maurice knew exactly which heartstrings to pull. Tell the kids we're sorry, I said. Then I ended the call. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the truck stop sign and the distant rumble of an 18-wheeler pulling off the highway. Denise turned toward me. Irving, what the hell is going on? I closed my eyes and finally told her about the call 2 months earlier. Maurice had come to our house alone, no wife Veronica, no kids. He'd looked stressed, kept checking his phone, barely touched the coffee Denise made him. Then he'd told me his construction business was in serious trouble. Not just cash flow, but real debt, $180,000 in the hole, he said. Equipment loans, material costs, payroll he couldn't meet. Some of it from banks, some from private lenders who didn't wait politely for payment. He'd asked if our house was paid off. Asked about the value. I'd told him we'd had it appraised at $320,000 last year for insurance purposes. Then he'd asked if I still kept our property papers in the home safe. I'd laughed and asked why he needed to know that. He'd laughed too, but it didn't reach his eyes. Said he was just curious about how I organized important documents, maybe wanted to set up something similar. Then he'd asked about our retirement accounts, about the lake property my father had left me, worth maybe $80,000 if we ever sold it, about whether everything was in both my name and Denise's, or if I had sole ownership of anything. At the time, I'd chalked it up to his son getting interested in family financial planning. Maybe thinking about inheritance, estate planning, that kind of thing. Seemed responsible, actually. Now sitting in that truck stop parking lot, every piece clicked into place like a blueprint finally making sense. The sudden reunion invitation after months of barely talking. The way Maurice had insisted we come early before the rest of the family. The way Veronica had texted 3 times to make sure we brought the folder with old family records, claiming the kids wanted them for some school project about family history. The hidden truck, the waiting men. My son's face. I looked at Denise and said the words I'd been too ashamed to say before. I think Maurice wanted more than a reunion. I think he wanted us alone so he could pressure us into signing something. Property transfer papers, loan collateral agreements, something to get him access to our assets. And I think those men were there to make sure we cooperated if we refused. Denise stared at me, stunned. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Veronica. "Stop making this harder than it needs to be. Come back now or Maurice will have to handle this differently." My blood turned to ice. Denise read it over my shoulder and her face went pale. "Handle it differently," she whispered. What does that mean? At that exact moment, a black pickup truck turned off the highway and rolled slowly into the truck stop parking lot. When the driver's door opened, I saw one of the men from Maurice's driveway step out and look directly at us. "That's what it means," I said grimly. Denise saw him too. She didn't scream, didn't panic. She just reached for the car keys and said in a low voice, "Get down." I slid lower in my seat as my phone started ringing again. Through the side window, I watched boots crossing the cracked asphalt, slow and deliberate, like someone who believed they had all the time in the world. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a brown jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see his whole face, but I didn't need to. This was one of the two men who'd been watching Maurice's driveway like site foremen waiting for the crew to show up. Denise started the engine. The pickup truck stopped 2 spaces away, blocking our easiest exit route. The man lifted one hand like he was greeting old friends, but his smile had all the warmth of a contract negotiation gone bad. "He's trying to box us in," I muttered. Denise put the car in reverse. The man's friendly expression disappeared. Then another truck appeared at the parking lot entrance behind us. "They've got us trapped," I whispered. "Not yet they don't," Denise said grimly. She turned the wheel hard, backed up over the curb, and cut across a patch of grass behind the convenience store. The car bounced so hard I grabbed the door handle. In the mirror, I saw a trash can fly sideways as we clipped it. The black truck roared to life behind us. We shot past the restaurant and onto a side road that ran parallel to the highway. Gravel sprayed from our tires like buckshot. My wife isn't normally an aggressive driver, but in that moment she drove like someone who understood that following traffic laws was less important than keeping us alive. I twisted around and looked back. The truck was following us, maybe 200 yards behind, close enough that I could see dust rolling off its hood. "Call 911, Denise said, her voice tight but steady. My hands shook as I dialed. The operator answered, calm and professional, and I tried to explain through my racing pulse that we were being followed near County Road 47, that we had reason to believe men were trying to intercept us, that our son's family reunion might have been some kind of setup. Even to my own ears, it sounded crazy. But the operator stayed on the line, asked me to keep describing our location and the vehicle following us. I did. I read street signs, described the truck, told her there were at least 2 men involved. "Sir, can you tell me why you believe these individuals want to intercept you?" she asked. "Financial fraud," I said. "We think our son was planning to force us to sign property transfer documents." That got her attention. Her voice sharpened. "Are you in immediate physical danger?" I looked back at the truck, now maybe 150 yards behind us. "Yes, I think we are." The road curved through farmland and scattered trees. The truck was gaining on us close enough now that I could make out the driver's face in the windshield. Then it sped up. "They're getting closer," I said. "I see them." Denise's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Ahead of us, the road split. One direction led toward town, the other cut through rural countryside toward the interstate. Denise took the town route without hesitation. The 911 operator said deputies were on the way, but the nearest patrol car was still 8 minutes out. 8 minutes felt like forever. Then my phone started ringing again. "Maurice, put it on speaker," Denise said. I answered. "Dad, stop this right now," Maurice said, and all pretense was gone from his voice. He sounded desperate, angry, scared. "You sent men after us?" I said, staring ahead at the road. "I sent friends to bring you back before you ruin everything." He snapped. "Ruin? What? Your plan to rob us? It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. That hurt worse than if he'd just admitted it outright. Not because it made things better, but because it proved this was all real. "Then tell me what it was supposed to be," I said. Maurice's breathing came through the speaker, hard and uneven. In the background, I could hear voices. Veronica saying something sharp. A child laughing somewhere far away. That almost broke me. My grandkids were there near whatever ugly thing their parents had planned. Then Maurice spoke again, quieter now. "You were just supposed to sign some papers. Temporary stuff, emergency loan collateral agreements." It was only until I could fix the business mess. "What papers?" I demanded. "Property transfer forms, temporary liens, just enough to satisfy the creditors until I could get back on my feet." Denise made a sound of pure disgust. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You invited us to a family reunion so you could force us to sign away our home as collateral for your debts." "It's not just the house," Maurice burst out. "You don't understand. I'm drowning here, Dad. These people don't mess around. The bank debt is one thing, but the private money, they want $180,000 plus 2 months of penalty interest. That's another $15,000. And if I don't have it by next week, they're talking about taking everything. The business equipment, the house, they even mentioned coming after family assets. So you thought you'd throw us to them instead? There was silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. You were never going to lose anything if you just cooperated. The papers were temporary. I would have paid everything back once the Miller Boulevard project came through. The word cooperated told me everything. It meant he'd expected resistance. It meant the men weren't just for show. It meant he'd planned for intimidation from the start. I don't know who you are right now, I said quietly. His voice cracked. Dad, please, if you go to the police, I'm finished. Veronica doesn't know about all of it. The kids don't understand. This could destroy the whole family. No, I said, you already did that. I ended the call. We'd reached the outskirts of town now. A gas station, a pharmacy, a few small businesses, normal people going about their Saturday afternoon. The black truck had fallen back, maybe worried about witnesses and security cameras. The 911 operator directed us to pull into the pharmacy parking lot and wait near the entrance. Denise parked under a bright light by the front doors where anyone inside could see us through the windows. The truck drove past once, slowly, then disappeared down a side street. I sagged back in my seat, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in the past hour. 2 sheriff's vehicles arrived within minutes. The lead deputy was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Deputy Rodriguez, according to her name tag. They listened carefully while we explained what had happened, and I could see her taking mental notes as we talked. When I showed her the text from Veronica, her expression hardened. When I played back the recorded 911 call with Maurice's voice on it, she wrote down every word he'd said about the $180,000 debt and the property transfer documents. Then came the hard part. I had to tell them about the conversation 2 months earlier, about Maurice asking strange questions about our safe, our property records, our will, about the survey documents that had gone missing from our home office, about the key Maurice still had for emergencies. Has your son been under financial stress? Deputy Rodriguez asked. I explained about the failed construction business, the $180,000 in debt split between bank loans and private lenders, the pressure from creditors who didn't wait politely for payment. I told her about the Miller Boulevard project that Maurice kept saying would fix everything if he could just hold on long enough to bid it. Within 2 hours, they'd gone to Maurice's house. Most of the family guests had been sent away. The kids were safe with neighbors while police sorted everything out. Maurice wasn't there. He'd left before the deputies arrived. But Veronica was, and she had a story about misunderstandings and business associates who were just helping with party setup. However, they found several blank property transfer documents on the dining room table, along with copied records from our home files. One of those papers included what looked like practice attempts at forging my signature, Irving Patterson, written over and over in Maurice's handwriting, getting closer to my actual signature each time. They also found the metal lockbox Maurice had taken from our garage, the one he thought contained the original deed to our $80,000 lake property, the deed that had actually been moved to our bank's safety deposit box 6 years earlier. But even with the real deed secure, Maurice had still tried to steal from us, still forged my name, still set up what amounted to an ambush with hired intimidation. Deputy Rodriguez called us that evening with updates. Maurice had been found at the old lake cabin, arrested without incident. Veronica was being charged as well. The business associates were being investigated for their role in the scheme. My grandson Clarence was the one who broke my heart, though. When Family Services interviewed him, he said he'd heard his parents arguing after we drove away, Maurice throwing things, Veronica screaming that he'd ruined everything by letting us get too close to the hidden truck. One of the men shouting that time was up and someone else would collect what was owed if Maurice couldn't deliver. That someone else, we never did find out who was really behind the private loans that started all this. The legal process took months. Maurice eventually pled guilty to attempted fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. He got 18 months in county jail, which felt both too little and too much. Too little for what he'd tried to do to us. Too much for the grandson who'd once helped me build birdhouses in our backyard. Veronica got 6 months and 200 hours of community service. The business associates got their own separate charges for intimidation and conspiracy. The kids came to live with us temporarily while everything got sorted out. Clarence, who's 14 and smart enough to understand more than we'd like, asked me one evening why his dad had done it. I told him what I wished someone had told me years earlier. That desperation makes people do things they never thought they'd do, but it doesn't make those things right. And that sometimes the people who love you have to choose truth over protection. We changed all our locks, moved more documents to the bank. set up new security systems, but the biggest change was in how our family works now. No more lending money without contracts. No more access just in case. No more ignoring warning signs to keep dinner conversation pleasant. A year later, we held a real family reunion. Not at Maurice's old place, obviously, but at our daughter Brenda's house. Simple backyard barbecue, kids running around, normal family chaos. Clarence grilled burgers beside me. He's gotten tall this past year and serious in a way that breaks my heart. But he smiled when little Rodney tried to flip a burger and nearly launched it into the grass. This feels different, Clarence said to me while we watched the family. Better different, I agreed. Maurice wrote me a letter from county jail before his release. Not asking me to save him, that was new. Not blaming Veronica or circumstances or bad luck. That was new too. He wrote that he finally understood that every shortcut he'd taken had been a theft from the future, his own and everyone else's. He wrote that seeing Clarence cry at the police station had broken something in him that should have broken years earlier. I wrote back once. Told him I hoped he'd spend his time inside becoming someone his kids could safely trust again. Told him that being sorry only matters when it grows legs and walks into changed behavior. He's out now, working construction for someone else's company, living in a small apartment, seeing his kids on supervised visits. We don't talk much, but I hear through Brenda that he's doing honest work and paying back what he can. But the kids are doing better. Clarence still lives with us part-time, but he smiles more now, says he likes knowing where everyone stands, even when it's complicated. That's the thing I learned too late, but not too late to pass on. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Speak up when you need to, even if it makes things uncomfortable. Silence might keep peace for an hour, but truth can protect a family for years. The day I told Denise to turn the car around, I thought I was just avoiding trouble. I didn't know I was turning our whole family away from one kind of future and toward a harder but cleaner one. I never looked at Maurice the same way again. But because I finally chose truth over silence, I was still there to see my grandchildren grow up in an honest home. And that, I've learned, is worth more than any peace you can buy with looking the other way. Because a family built on truth might be harder to manage, but it's the only kind that can truly protect the people you love when trouble comes knocking. Sometimes the biggest gift you can give your grandchildren isn't money in the bank or property in their name. It's showing them that even when family breaks your heart, you still choose what's right over what's easy.